Thank you for joining us here at the First Alert Desk on Atlanta News First Plus. I am Maria Moreau here taking a live look as we get ready to take you out to the Georgia State Capitol, where we are expected to hear remarks from Governor Brian Kemp in his annual State of the State address, welcoming the 2025 legislative session that started on Monday and previewing the year ahead while looking back at all that he found himself proud of and all of the work his administration did during 2024. I want to take you out full. You can see inside of the General Assembly floor where lawmakers are gathering, and I believe they're applauding now as the first speakers that will present remarks at this State of the State address ahead of the governor are expected to speak. Let's listen into that room just for a moment.
It's good to see everyone here this morning, so if everyone will come in, we'll be ready to welcome the governor. House members, if you will find your seats, please. House members, if you will find your seats, take your seats, please.
All right, and as you can see, lawmakers still gathering, getting ready to hear remarks from state leaders and Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, of course, the man of the hour. It has been a busy week, a busy start to the year, I should say, for the Georgia governor between winter weather response and the start of this new legislative session. Just yesterday, Governor Kemp shared a plan to expand eligibility for Georgia Pathways to Children's and Mothers, a big initiative as he addressed health care priorities for his administration and the legislative body. And again, we are still monitoring this live stream for you as we wait for lawmakers to take their seats and the governor to make his way down. As we monitor that, I just want to continue with some of what we saw earlier this week on Atlanta News First Plus. Again, the governor addressing healthcare priorities and what his budgetary initiatives will be for the state. Our Atlanta News First, Abby Kasouris, was at that news conference and has more.
Instead of expanding Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act, Governor Brian Kemp's Georgia Pathways program offers insurance for low-income working Georgians. Today, he made it clear on the direction that he wants Georgia to take. House and Senate Republicans standing by Governor Brian Kemp as he lays out a plan to expand eligibility for Georgia Pathways to children and mothers, as well as adding paternity coverage.
The old system is not working. And the other side, their only answer to any of this is they want government-run health care, and I am not in that boat.
A study from Forbes Advisor finds Georgia is the worst state for access to health care. 15% of Georgians choose not to go to the doctor because it's too expensive. 12% don't have insurance. 12 doctors per 10,000 people, they say, is not enough. House Minority Leader Carolyn Hughley says Republicans have failed Georgians as it relates to health care.
Well, I applaud the Republicans for being loyal to their governor. But in that loyalty, we are not helping Georgians.
Last year, Republicans broke from their party to join Democrats on the issue of Medicaid expansion. With this signal from the governor, we might not see that split again this year. Democrats and Republicans agree they need to do something to keep doctors in our state. We do expect there will be bills investing in medical schools and incentivizing doctors to work in rural parts of our state. In Atlanta, I'm Abby Kasouris.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. No, it's you. Speaker, I greatly appreciate that. I never expected such a warm welcome from the House here today. But it is a pleasure to be here, and thank you, Mr. Speaker, for that warm introduction. And the feelings are mutual. We do have a great working relationship, and I can tell you why, because we both have strong ladies at the house that would set us straight, and Miss Dale Burns and my wife Jan Jones there in the balcony. They And we look forward to a great session this year. We have been very fortunate to have a great working relationship the last 2 years, and starting our third year, mine in Lieutenant Governor's role and Speaker in his new role as Speaker. It still feels new, doesn't it, Speaker? Yeah. And I hope that this next biennial will be as successful as the last two. But we are here today, members of the General Assembly, for a joint session, and that joint session will come to order so that we can hear from our governor of the state of the state. At this time, I'd like to recognize Mr. Doorkeeper.
President, the Honorable Michael Boggs, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and the Justice of the Supreme Court, along with the Honorable Amanda H. Mercier, Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals, and the judges of the Court of Appeals await entrance to the chamber.
Mr. Doorkeeper, please allow the Honorable Michael P. Boggs, the Justice of the Supreme Court, and the Honorable Amanda Mercer, and the judges of the Court of Appeals, entrance into this chamber.
And as we wait for Governor Brian Kemp to make his way to the General Assembly floor inside the Georgia State Capitol, we do just want to let you know that the audio has been requested to be turned off for this period. We will return you to audio once we see the Georgia governor, of course, enter this legislative floor. As of right now, that audio is turned off. I did just want to let you know some of the remarks that you heard from Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones addressing the legislative body, welcoming a new session, and of course remarking on the progress made in 2024. Speaker of the House, John Byrne, standing right alongside him, and of course several city and state leaders present today for the State of the State address from Governor Brian Kemp. That is expected to begin momentarily as members of this legislative body prepare to welcome the governor onto the floor.
If all members will take their seats. If all members would take their seats. I'll ask the clerk to read a resolution.
House Resolution 4 by Representative Estration of the 104th, a resolution calling a joint session of the House of Representatives and the Senate for the purposes of hearing a message from the governor, inviting the justices of the Supreme Court of the judge and the judges of the Court of Appeals to be present at the joint session and for other purposes.
Recognize Mr. Doorkeeper.
Mr. President, His Excellency, the Honorable Brian P. Kemp, Governor of the State of Georgia, and his Committee of Escorts await entrance to the chamber.
Thank you, Mr. Doorkeeper. Please allow His Excellency Brian P. Kemp, Governor of the State of Georgia, and his Committee of Escorts entrance into the chamber.
And the Georgia governor makes his way down this legislative floor of the Georgia General Assembly at our state capitol. Again, walking his way to the podium, shaking hands with city leaders, state leaders, a lot of members of the General Assembly here today, actually all. We are expecting the governor to deliver his annual State of the State address momentarily, where he will speak about the progress made in 2024 and also look to the future and welcome the General Assembly for year 2025. Again, the legislative session opening on Monday for year 2025, and Governor Brian Kemp already a busy start to the month as he has held news conferences and addressed a number of issues, including health care, tort reform, his educational priorities, even speaking at the annual Eggs and Issues event in front of Georgia leaders and businesses. There was also the winter storm that we saw last week. Governor Brian Kemp assembling emergency response and preparing the city and state for the ice and snow that we saw. So fair to say the governor has been keeping busy this legislative session so far, and we are expecting remarks from him as he makes his way up to that podium. Those will begin momentarily. Now, audio has been muted as members of the legislative body, the Georgia General Assembly, talk to one another. We are expecting that audio to return momentarily as Governor Kemp takes to the mic.
It is a great pleasure to have Governor Kemp here today for this joint session. But before we get to the governor's State of the State, there are some very special people here in the audience that we need to recognize. And I know no one more dear to the governor's heart than the First Lady and his 3 daughters, Miss Marty Kemp. Please recognize Miss Marty Kemp. We also like to welcome the governor's mother is here today. So Miss Ann Cavas. Also joining us today is his sister and her husband, Miss Julie Reef and Mr. Rocky Reef. Please welcome them today. I also like to recognize the First Lady of the Senate. A lady is very dear to my heart, Miss Jan Jones. I also have a former House member here today who I like to call Father. Mr. Bill Jones is here today as well. He served, as he says it, he served back in the late 70s and early 80s, and he said that's when we had fun up here. So, and I'm also proud to have my older brother with us here today. Mr. Brian Jones is also here as well. Obviously, Speaker Burns, I take great pleasure in getting to introduce your lovely wife, Miss Dale Burns, here today. The Speaker Pro Tem of this chamber, Ms. Jan Jones, Representative Jan Jones here. And our fine Pro Tem, the man from Macon, Georgia, Mr. Senator John F. Kennedy, here today. And please welcome all at once all our constitutional officers who are in the gallery there. Y'all please stand and be recognized. I want to thank Governor Kemp for his steadfast leadership these last 6 years. Governor Kemp has created economic growth beyond our imagination, and he's done it from Brunswick to Blue Ridge, from Augusta to Columbus. He is somebody who works tirelessly for the good people of the state of Georgia, and he is somebody that I've been proud to work with, not just in my time in the state Senate, but starting my 3rd year as Lieutenant Governor. Governor Kemp has always put Georgians first, whether it's in economic growth, whether it's in access to health care, or whether it's been in our educational system, both K through 12 and our higher education. He's guided us through some very tough times and also some very politically trying times. He guided us through a pandemic in his early stages of his governorship. He also led us and really made us a model through the tragic incident that happened during Hurricane Helene, where we had so many of our Georgians who were affected by it. You didn't hear a lot about it on the national level because Governor Kemp and his team did such a great job of getting in front of that storm and before and working through the aftermath before the news media could pick up on the fact that Georgia was doing things right. We weren't trying to blame anybody else. We were doing things right. And he's still going to do more for those citizens of those communities that have been so affected by that. He's in his last 2 years, and he deserves a lot of respect, and he deserves a lot of credit for what we've been able to do here as elected officials in this state. And I look forward to serving the next 2 years with Governor Kemp as well as Speaker Burns, with you as well, our elected officials, both on the House and Senate side. So please give a warm welcome to the Governor of the great state of Georgia, Mr. Brian P. Kemp. Thank y'all so much. Thank y'all. You're very kind. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Jones, Speaker Burns, President Pro Tem Kennedy, Speaker Pro Tem Jones, members of the General Assembly, my fellow constitutional officers, members of the Public Service Commission, Mayor Dickens, members of the Judiciary, members of the Consular Corps, and my fellow Georgians. As we begin a new year with some new colleagues under this gold dome, and as we reflect on the past successes and challenges of prior years, I'm reminded again and again that no matter what, Georgians outlast the tough times and achieve new heights of success. In just the 6 years since I've taken office, we have faced the trials of COVID-19, a major recession as a result of that unprecedented pandemic, the effects of 11 hurricanes, some of them causing historic generational damage, over 200 tornadoes that caused direct injuries, and a summer of unrest and various threats to public safety, some of which are ongoing, and other challenges that required and received the very best of our people. And through it all, time and time again, Georgians have risen to the occasion. As the saying goes, tough times don't last, but tough people do. And if there is anything that I've learned in the 6 years that I've been honored to serve as your governor, it's that hard-working Georgians are not only tough, they're also generous, proud, and love our great state, because that is who we are. And that is why the state of our state is not only strong, it is resilient. Marty and I have been especially reminded of that following the devastating impacts of Hurricane Helene. With historic rainfall and mudslides in North Georgia, record flooding in Atlanta with over 11 inches in just 2 days, and a massive amount of damage across much of the southeastern United States. Hundreds of thousands of Georgians across the state were victims of that storm's fury. Georgia Power reported it was the worst storm they've ever seen, with over 11,800 power poles broken, over 5,800 transformers damaged, and over 20,000 people who worked around the clock to restore power. In total, 230 people across the country lost their lives, 34 of them right here in Georgia, including 4 of our children. Marty and I toured 16 of the hardest hit counties in Helene's wake, and in every community we saw utter devastation. But in the face of grief and unbearable loss, we also saw everyday heroes. We saw neighbors helping neighbors, lending a hand or a chainsaw even when their own home or farm was in need of attention.
We saw brand new church outreach programs feeding whole towns. And we saw first responders who put their lives above their own. Will you please join me in applauding their bravery? Courageous men and women like them had to cut people out of their homes and sadly had to recover the bodies of those killed by this storm. The heartbreaking loss of these lives is made even worse by the loss of livelihoods, especially for our farmers and timber growers who have endured over $5.5 billion worth of damage. As you know, our farmers needed relief quickly and efficiently. And that's why we repurposed $100 million to the Georgia Development Authority last November to provide direct financial support for our farmers and timber producers. It's also why, along with our congressional delegation, Lieutenant Governor Jones, Speaker Burns, Commissioner Harper, many of you, and many others, urged the U.S. Congress and the Biden administration to fast-track block grants to our state. I want to extend my deepest gratitude to every member of Georgia's congressional delegation, both Republicans and Democrats, who voted to support that legislation. I also want to thank both President Biden and President-elect Trump for their support of the disaster relief package as well. Our people will receive the aid they desperately need and deserve, and for that, I am grateful. But rest assured, the elected leaders under this gold dome will stand with them for as long as necessary to make sure every Georgian can recover and come back stronger than before. Thank you, and I thank the many members who worked so hard out there on the ground as well in helping with the recovery. And just as communities across the state need relief after Hurricane Helene, all Georgians need permanent relief from the historic storm of inflation. The past 3 years have drained family bank accounts, sapped the strength of our small businesses, and left too many Georgians struggling to make ends meet. From groceries and rent to building supplies and everyday goods and services, the price of nearly everything Georgians purchase or consume has gone up, often faster than their take-home pay. This happened because the federal government decided to spend your money like it was somebody else's, like a credit card with no limit that someone else would have to pay back, instead of reining in spending, cutting taxes, or even coming close to balancing a budget. But in Georgia, we don't conduct the people's business with trillion-dollar deficits or endless continuing resolutions. Just because we take in more money doesn't mean we need to create new big government programs to fund for eternity. Instead, we budget conservatively, fund our priorities, keep government efficient, cut taxes, and then return that money back to you. Between multiple tax rebates, multiple suspensions of the state gas tax over the past 2 years, the homeowner tax relief grant you passed last year, and the largest state income tax cut in history that the members seated here helped us accelerate, we've committed to saving Georgia taxpayers over $7.6 billion. And because of our conservative approach to budgeting and this body's support in holding the line on state spending, along with the incredible economy we've bolstered, we're able to double down on that relief. The prior acceleration you passed last session brought down the Georgia income tax rate to a rate of 5.39%, down a full 36 basis points from where we started in 2022. Today, I'm proposing a further cut of 20 basis points to bring us down to just 5.19%, saving Georgians another $7.5 billion over the next 10 years. Because at the end of the day, that's your money, not the government's. And here in Georgia, we believe you should keep more of it. Our conservative budgeting and balanced approach to taxes and spending are just some of the reasons that we've been named the top state for business for 11 years in a row, which is absolutely unprecedented. Like you, I am proud of that distinction, because businesses, both large and small, and everything in between, are the lifeblood of our economy. When your community can attract an automotive supplier that creates 30 new jobs, or help an existing tissue and paper manufacturer expand its operations by over 100 jobs, those are real lives and real families that are impacted. Those are hard-working Georgians who now have a chance to start a career, provide for their loved one, and build a better future. Georgia's success in attracting good-paying jobs and investments is widely known. Since I took office, together, we have attracted over 193,000 new private sector jobs and over $90 billion in investment. And the majority of those jobs and investments are going to rural areas. And those numbers just cover projects where the state was involved. They don't include all the organic growth underway throughout our entire state. Over the last 20 years, we have fought through economic headwinds and a pandemic, while still remaining one of the best states for business and economic opportunity. Georgia prevailed because when the state welcomes job growth, innovation, and prosperity, everyone prospers, no matter their zip code. While we're number one for business because we listen to and work with new and existing job creators. We didn't hand out government mandates or let partisan politics dictate state policy. We let our people and our job creators lead the way. We trusted hardworking Georgians to use their God-given abilities to create and innovate, and our state is better off for it. But Georgia's economic success is a lot like football. To quote Coach Kirby Smart, humility is only a week away, and there are storm clouds on the horizon. As we look ahead, I believe one of the biggest threats to Georgia's future is our state's legal environment. Last year, my office worked with the General Assembly and the Insurance Commissioner's Office and John King to pass House Bill 1114. This legislation allowed Commissioner King to gather data and information on Georgia's insurance industry, identify reforms that could be made to stabilize insurance costs, expand choices for consumers when they need coverage, and prevent more insurance carriers from leaving Georgia altogether. Additionally, over the last few months, my office hosted 3 roundtables throughout the state, listening to small businesses across a wide range of industries, including healthcare providers from Albany to Toccoa and some of our state's largest employers. Even though each person at those roundtables came from a different part of our state, represented a different industry or business, told a unique story, or had a different perspective, the call for action was unanimous. It's abundantly clear that the status quo isn't working, and a failure to act on meaningful tort reform will continue to put Georgians and their livelihoods in serious jeopardy. For some that I met, the cost of insurance is threatening their ability to operate. Small business owners reported insurance premiums up anywhere from 30% to over 100% over the last few years, costing them hundreds of thousands or millions just to get basic coverage. For too many of them, that meant holding back on hiring more employees, waiting to grow their business, or making difficult decisions about whether or not they could even keep the lights on. For others, the biggest problem was the complete lack of insurance options, or the threat of paying thousands or millions to fend off excessive lawsuits. At the end of the day, the increased cost of doing business is simply passed on to the consumer, hard-working Georgians who are already struggling to make ends meet. As a small business owner for over 35 years, I know that if you can't get insurance, you can't run a business and you can't pay your employees. And nobody can afford to spend years and millions in a courtroom battling to keep the doors open in their small business. It's unsustainable and it's widespread. At our first roundtable, we spoke to the leaders of a child care company with multiple locations in metro Atlanta. They have experienced a 100% increase in insurance costs since just 2018. We heard from a South Georgia grocer who lost coverage completely after frivolous lawsuits were filed. One business owner's statement stuck out to me. He said, "At this point, I don't feel like I'm able to run my business. I'm just trying not to lose it." That sentiment carried into our second roundtable with healthcare providers in Macon, where we heard firsthand the challenges our legal environment poses to critical services, our healthcare workforce, and the ability for hospitals and clinics to operate. One hospital system that serves much of rural Georgia had liability premiums go up 115% in just 1 year. Another hospital in northwest Georgia actually had their premiums decrease 13% from 2022 to 2024, but only because the facility closed their labor and delivery unit in 2021. This was due to workforce challenges and soaring liability insurance costs. We were told story after story of hospitals struggling to recruit and retain doctors, especially OBGYNs and other specialty disciplines, because other states offer stronger protections for healthcare providers, lower insurance rates, and a more level playing field in their courtrooms. And we've heard from multiple doctors who wondered how much longer they're going to be able to practice for fear of being targeted by baseless or excessive lawsuits. These stories highlight a legal environment that leads to fewer options for Georgians seeking care, higher cost, and ultimately worse health outcomes for our people. At the third roundtable, some of Georgia's favorite brands and biggest job creators shared the challenges confronting their businesses and employees. The roundtable was hosted by Waffle House, and I think everyone here will agree that no matter your politics, there's nothing more Georgian than ordering hash browns smothered and covered from one of their 440 locations across our state. I knew that hash browns line would get y'all. Whether it's an emergency family trip on Thanksgiving because the turkey ended up burnt, a midnight meal during an all-night study session in college, or celebrating the big win by your son or daughter's rec team, Waffle House and great Georgia brands like them create unforgettable memories for all of us. They also create opportunity and a great career for their employees, over 10,000 of them in Georgia alone. Waffle House, as you know, is open on July 4th, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, Easter, and everything in between, in case one of us needs a cup of coffee, an all-star special, or just a friendly smile. In fact, they're only closed when disaster strikes, or unfortunately, when they can't afford to remain open because of a legal environment that forces them to limit hours, hold back on hiring, or change their business model. Georgia accounts for roughly 22% of Waffle House locations in the country, but almost 37% of their litigation cost. Their liability insurance premiums have gone up 235% since 2018, and their average cost for a negligent security lawsuit in Georgia is 5 times higher than in Florida, 9 times higher than Texas, 21 times higher than South Carolina, and 27 times the average cost of a similar lawsuit in Alabama. When we talk about how to continue Georgia's success as the top state for business for the next 11 years and how to keep our state's best and brightest days ahead, it starts right here. Stories like Waffle House, stories like those small town grocers and child care facilities, the mom and pop restaurants that make our communities special, the healthcare providers who are there for us when we need them the most. Without them, our state is not the same, and Georgia will never realize its full potential. The tort reform legislation my office will introduce in the coming days will be comprehensive but fair. Because in Georgia, we believe those who do wrong should be held accountable, and if you have been wrong, you deserve justice. I also believe the legislation we will be introducing can and should have bipartisan support. Making sure your neighborhood has a grocery store with fresh food available to a young single mom or an elderly couple on a fixed income isn't a Republican or a Democrat issue. Recruiting an OBGYN or a GI doctor to your hometown doesn't depend on what lever you pull in the voting booth. Stabilizing the cost of car insurance and ensuring families have access to affordable housing, it's not partisan, it's common sense. Giving working people and small business owners a chance at the American dream is about who we are as a state, not what political party we support. To my Democratic friends, there is no reason we can't tackle tort reform together. Passing anti-hate crimes legislation, repealing the citizen's arrest statute, and supporting victims of human trafficking. These are all tough issues, but Democrats and Republicans accomplished them together because it was the right thing to do for all Georgians, not just the ones that voted for us. Lay that out perfect. As a former legislator myself, I can promise you that a vote to support the hardworking men and women of our state, a vote to put them first ahead of the status quo, is never a bad vote. But I know this issue is complicated and will not be easy to fix. There are many different stakeholders with competing ideas about how to move forward. However, doing nothing is no longer an option. We will do what is right by the people of our state. We will be fair to all involved in this important debate, and we will work together to pass legislation that strikes the right balance and puts hardworking Georgians first. But also want to be very clear. There's always room for compromise, but there will be no room for excuses, half measures, or failure. Whether it is this legislative session or perhaps a second one later this year, we will achieve meaningful, impactful tort reform. The Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker noticed how quick y'all picked up on that last line. Because if we take seriously our mission to keep Georgia the best place to live, work, and raise a family for the next generation, we have to get off the sidelines and get to work. Keeping our state moving in the right direction also means proudly supporting our law enforcement and honoring those who bravely run into the face of danger to protect and defend us all. Last year, when a deranged gunman attacked one of our schools, a place that should be safe for everyone, 2 on-site officers confronted and arrested him within 2 minutes, while numerous local and state law enforcement rushed to the scene, including Sheriff Judge Smith. Those 2 school resource officers saved many lives at Appalachia High School on that horrific day and have more than earned our gratitude. Sergeant Chase Boyd, Deputy Brandon King, and Sheriff Smith are here with us today. I'd like to ask them to stand and let us thank them and their colleagues for their heroic efforts. As you can imagine, these 2 did not want to be with us here today. They wanted to be protecting their school, but I told them it was important for them to be here, for us to let them and their colleagues around the state know how much we appreciate what you do every single day to keep our schools and our communities safe. Thank you all. I also want to thank those members of the legislature who were here in 2019 and 2023, who supported 2 rounds of funding for direct campus security grants to every school in Georgia. And last year, with the support of Lieutenant Governor Jones and Speaker Burns and you all, the members of the General Assembly, we made yearly funding to strengthen school safety a permanent part of our base budgets. In total, we have allocated $294 million for campus safety so far, and my budget proposal includes a further $159 million for that purpose. And just as we're protecting Georgia's children in our classroom, we're also going after those who target them outside of school, including gangs and human traffickers. Thanks to the vital work of the members of the Grace Commission, law enforcement partners, including the GBI's Human Trafficking Exploitation Unit, and prosecutors on the state and local levels, all championed by the nation's best First Lady, Marty Kemp. The state has now investigated over 330 human trafficking cases, convicted 49 human traffickers, and saved roughly 200 lives. I want to thank Attorney General Chris Carr and the Human Trafficking Prosecution Unit, led by Hannah Palmquist, for all that they have done to help make Georgia a safe place for victims and a hostile state for the perpetrators. The Attorney General's office has also investigated 140 gang-related cases, securing 52 convictions and charged more than 140 individuals. And that's just since the unit was stood up less than 2 years ago. My budget includes just over $1.2 million to expand the gang and human trafficking prosecution units in the Attorney General's office to further this good work. Also, Marty will spearhead the passage of her 10th human trafficking bill that will reinforce the good work of the Grace Commission. Their resilience in fighting this good fight is why Georgia is leading on this issue, and this latest measure will be yet another reminder that if you come after our children, we are coming after you. Just as Marty has been instrumental in going after those who threaten our children and making Georgia a safe place for those seeking to rebuild their lives, she has also been a tireless champion for mental health services. For over a year now, as she has promoted the 988 Suicide and Crisis Hotline, she has carried this message forward: it's okay to not be okay. And as a result, more and more Georgians are finding the support they need to stay resilient in the face of difficulty. Last year, you put more funding toward behavioral and mental health needs than ever before, over $1.6 billion. I want to thank the First Lady, Commissioner Kevin Tanner, and the frontline caregivers who are helping Georgians process and overcome the challenges of mental distress. Several of those caregivers have joined us today. They are the true coaches of resiliency who help children and young adults deal with the unimaginable. Christina Lowe, Whitney Hardegree, Laura Etheridge, and Karen Hope were some of the first on the scene in the days following the tragedy at Appalachia High School. Their strength, knowledge, and skill have helped those who have witnessed evil be able to move forward and continue on life's path, and for that, they have our deepest gratitude. I'd like to ask Christina, Whitney, Laura, and Karen to please stand and let us recognize you and thank you for all that you are doing. We know that your work is not complete and there's a long road ahead, but we are grateful for what you and the Sheriff's Department are doing to continue to support the great community in Barrow County. Mental health services like this are improving the quality of health care and access in our state, as is the newly launched state-based exchange, which is the latest milestone on the plan we laid out in the Patients First Act of 2019. These ongoing efforts are lowering the cost of premiums and increasing the number of those insured in Georgia. In fact, since I took office, the combined work of Georgia Access and Georgia Pathways is covering over 1.5 million people across our state. I will continue to repeat this until I'm blue in the face, even though many on the other side or in the media do not want to hear it. We are covering well over 200,000 more Georgians than traditional Medicaid expansion would cover. And those And it's important to remember, those Georgians are on better plans that deliver better coverage and lead to better health outcomes for them and their families. In fact, since I've taken office, we've seen over 93 provider rate increases through traditional Medicaid, and costs to the state have grown by more than $250 million per year. So when you hear someone say that fully expanding traditional Medicaid is fiscally responsible, know that they are selling you a bill of goods. because the numbers simply don't match the rhetoric. In total, Georgia spends over $4.2 billion for Medicaid in our state, and there are those who say the program only needs more money to succeed. Well, I respectfully disagree. With the new administration coming to Washington, I'm looking forward to furthering our innovative approach to health care access, which is making Georgia a leader in this field. And as I announced yesterday alongside Lieutenant Governor Jones and Speaker Burns, we're making it even easier to sign up for the Georgia Pathways program that helps Georgians start a rewarding career, get a degree, attain real-world skills, and ultimately receive better health care coverage. My high school football coach used to say, winning is contagious. He knew that when you have the momentum, when the entire team buys into the same mission, the same vision, when they play for each other, good things happen. Much like winning in football, I believe Georgia's success can be contagious. In spite of unprecedented challenges and many hard days, Georgia has enjoyed historic success. From jobs and investment, growth and opportunity, to freedom and prosperity. As the Speaker always says, it's a great time to be a Georgian. We achieved more than many thought we would, and we proved big things can get done. We showed that the Georgia way is indeed the better way. So let's keep playing hard for the people who sent us here. Let's keep putting hard-working Georgians and our state's success first. Let's avoid distractions and line up together to secure victory. I believe Georgia's success, its prosperity, and its promise for opportunity for all are indeed contagious, and it's our job to keep it that way. So let's get to work. Thank you all. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless the great state of Georgia. Thank you very much.
And you just heard from Georgia Governor Brian Kemp looking back at 2024 and ahead to the future of 2025 as the General Assembly. The legislative session for this year kicks off earlier on Monday, continuing on into the year. A lot of those remarks from Governor Brian Kemp setting the tone and direction for what this year will focus around. And now he stepping off the podium, shaking hands with members of the General Assembly, some new members, some familiar members, taking photos.
Appreciate you, appreciate
and
that
I do
message,
believe
and
Lieutenant Bird Jones will be speaking now. Let's listen in.
Us, and we look forward for a great next 2 years, and look forward to another one session, right, this year, right? I heard that. Recognize the Senate Pro Tem for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that this joint session of the Senate and House of Representatives be dissolved.
The Pro Tem has moved. All those in favor of his motion signify by saying aye. All those opposed, same sign. The ayes clearly have it. Y'all have a wonderful day. We adjourn.
And as the session adjourns, we want to take you live out to Atlanta News First News at noon. That starts now.